Today on True Talk podcast, we sit down with one of South Africa's most fearless and influential voices. Helen Zille has never shied away from tough conversations. We talk about leadership, South Africa's future, and what it really takes to stand for your convictions when the entire country is watching. This is Helen Zille, raw, real, and unfiltered.
Helen Zille, thank you so much for taking out the time. What's keeping you in politics? You've been here for years and it doesn't look like you're leaving anytime soon.
I'm not, because I've got a lot of energy. I am still on top of my game. And there's a lot of work to do. And I know that South Africa will never succeed unless we get the politics right, unless we establish constitutionalism and the rule of law, unless we can change governments through the ballot box. All of those things are foundational to a successful country. And while I can contribute to that, I'm in the game.
Very exciting. So you were born in Hillbrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in Hillbrow in Johannesburg, yes.
You've seen the decline throughout the years. What's going on there?
Lots is going on there. I mean, firstly, it's the lawlessness and the crime. Yeovil was the first really nicely integrated suburb in Johannesburg, and I went and got myself a flat there because I wanted to live in an integrated and mixed environment, an inclusive environment. And it was great for the first couple of years, but the minute crime sets in, then you're in big, big trouble. And the minute lawlessness sets in, you're in big trouble. So the city stops applying its bylaws. People start with petty theft and petty crime, and then it escalates big time. So I remember in Hillbrow, there used to be an all-night shop called Fontana. And that was a fabulous place. It was the only all-night shop in Johannesburg at that stage. And we'd come off from night shifts at work, and we'd go off to Fontana, and we'd buy ourselves a roast chicken and some fresh bread, and that was the life. And you could park anywhere in Hillbrow and walk to Fontana. It wasn't a problem. Now, obviously, you couldn't do that. And a neighborhood starts unraveling when the rule of law collapses.
So that's the main issue.
For me, it's the main issue. So when people start breaking the law, the authorities don't apply the law, and more people think they can get away with breaking the law. And things like, for example, paying your rates, paying your rent. Things like not littering is a huge thing. The minute you start breaking windows and littering, the place just unravels. So it's the small things and the big things that contribute.
How do you think you can fix this? What would be your solution?
It's not going to happen overnight. These things take time. I mean, the truth about institutions and governments is that it's much easier to break them than to build them. So you can have a few years of lawlessness in Hillbrow, and the place is so broken that it'll take you a decade to fix. Now, of course, there have been about 30 years of lawlessness in Hillbrow, and so it's going to take a very long time to fix. But a culture of law-abiding, accountable citizenry is indispensable for the future of South Africa. And that means the authorities have to apply the law without fear or favor. And that means that the people who apply the law can't be corrupt. And so there are layers and layers and layers that all have to be addressed. And it's difficult. Once institutions are broken, it is very difficult to rescue them. So, of course, it was much easier in Cape Town because the DA took over before institutions were broken here. The ANC hadn't been in power for a long time here. So it was very much easier. In Joburg, institutions are seriously broken and corruption runs very deep. And just recently, the Minister of Finance wrote a very stern letter to Mayor Mayoral saying to him, if they can't fix the finances, there's going to be big, big trouble for them. And that's because the whole system is broken. So to build it up is going to take a long time. And if, for example, you fix the tender system and the supply chain management system, no one out there is going to experience it or see it, despite the fact that that is backbreaking, difficult, and dangerous work. So people don't see you fixing what's wrong inside. They only see it many years later when it has an impact in getting honest contractors and very capable contractors doing the job. Then you start seeing it. But that depends on a good supply chain management system, which is invisible to the naked eye of most people.
So most of this is obviously, you would say, probably the ANC's fault.
Of course it's the ANC fault.
Everything.
Well, not everything. I mean, I can't blame everything on the ANC. But, you know, the voters must also stand up because voters get to put parties into government. And if you know that a party's failing, why do you keep voting for it? I mean, people get very upset when I say that, but it's true. Yeah. The voters are not these sweet, innocent people sitting on the sidelines. They determine who's in government.
And I've seen you've taken a lot of heat for things you've said in the past as well.
Every time I tell the truth, people get very upset.
People don't like the truth. That's why you're on True Talk today. So, I saw in 2017 there was a tweet of yours about colonialism that people took wrong. What's your comments on those?
Well, it was very simple. I spoke about the legacy of colonialism. I didn't speak about colonialism. There's a huge difference between an event's legacy and the event itself. The legacy is what is left behind. Now, there are 3 countries in the world that have never been colonized. 3. One is Liberia, one is Ethiopia, one is Thailand, I think. 3 countries in the world that have never been colonized. The question is not whether you've been colonized that causes you to fail subsequently. It's what you do with the legacy of colonialism, amongst other things, that determines whether you become a success or not. And so I was saying the legacy of colonialism in South Africa is not only negative. That's what I said. It's so obviously true that it is trite. Eskom and the electricity generation system is not only negative. Water reticulation and sewage systems are not only negative. Having a parliamentary democracy is not only negative. Having transport infrastructure, a road system, all of that is not only negative. The critical thing about countries that succeed once they've been colonized, and that applies to 99% of countries in the world, the critical thing is what they do with the legacy of colonialism. It's a simple point to make. It's so obviously true, and the whole country, including intelligent people, went into total meltdown, including my own party. It's just mad. It's just completely mad. I think one day we'll look back at all this madness and think, how did that even happen?
There's a lot of madness going on in the world right now.
Tell me about it.
I see this woke ideology is something we strongly oppose. What's your comments on these things?
Well, we're past peak woke. When I wrote my book, Stay Woke, Go Broke, in 2021, we were at peak woke. And I thought it could go either way. It could either escalate or we could get past the madness. Fortunately, I think the world is getting past the madness. But of course, the pendulum swings, so we've got another madness. And I think Donald Trump is part of the other madness. So what we actually need is a bit of rationality in between, But the truth is that it is insane to define the essence of human beings by the color of their skin, by their chromosomes, and by their gender. People are very complex, and it is absolutely true that they must be judged for their internal characteristics, their character, their competence, their commitment, their ethics. Those are the things that matter about people.
So voting for the DA, obviously there's many other parties people can vote for. And I asked Premier Alan Winnie this last time, but why should a Christian young man vote for the DA?
A Christian young man?
Yes.
Well, a Christian young man would vote for the DA because a Christian young man in a modern constitutional democracy would understand immediately that you have to separate the church and the state. You have to separate the church and the state because once a state becomes a state that espouses a specific religion, then it insulates itself from the challenges that should exist because it claims to exist on the truth. Now, the fact is that the political system is grounded in law and a supreme law called the Constitution. And the Constitution protects what we critically call freedom of religion, as well as freedom of speech, as well as freedom of association, all of those things. And freedom of religion gives you the right to be a Christian in a state that protects your right to be so and to live out your faith in ways that fulfill your purpose without infringing on the rights of other people. But it also gives a Muslim the right to do that. It also gives a Jew the right to do that. It also gives the atheist and the agnostic the right to do that, and the Hindu and any other religion, because a young Christian would say, I can be freest and safest and secure in my religion in a framework that guarantee the right to others, and that ensures that we protect each other's rights. And that is the DA's political philosophy. So there are more Christians, many more Christians in the DA than there are in the ACDP, the African Christian Democratic Party. There are many more Muslims, I dare to say, in the DA than there are in, let's say, Al-Jamaa. And I can go on. It's because all of those people don't have the same faith in common, and they don't have to. What they have to have in common is the realization that they have the right to exercise their faith as long as they defend the right of others to do that for their faith.
So the DA obviously supports the LGBTQ movement, and
No, I'm not saying we don't support it at all, but we support the right of people to be themselves. And we do believe that people's sexuality is determined by a number of complex factors, including genetic factors. And we don't believe that everybody else has the right to infringe into other people's lives if it involves decisions that consenting adults take and that don't harm others. That's the political philosophy behind our position on LGBTQI+ or whatever it is.
Yeah, because we obviously believe that male and female, it's one thing I really struggle to comprehend about the LGBTQ movement, obviously respecting other people and loving them for who they are. And as a Christian point of view, I think the view you must take is I can't judge someone because they're gay, and then I should be judging other people because they're sinning in other ways.
Yeah.
So
Well, you see, look, let me tell you this, that there's a lot of interesting research into homosexuality that is going on and that has been done. And I think that a lot of it points to the fact that your sexuality may well have a significant genetic component. Right? So it is there. And the fact is, I believe there are two sexes, male and female. That's an obvious scientific fact. The world goes into meltdown when I say that.
Yeah.
But it's an obvious scientific fact because to have a baby needs an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. And a Y chromosome comes from a man and the X chromosome comes from a woman. So that means biologically there are those two sexes and they are needed to make a baby. That is simply a scientific fact and it's not open to anybody's opinion, right? Two sexes. Now they say there's a whole lot of genders. Well, I don't go into that debate. I just think, as I said, it is a fashion these days. I said it's a social contagion.
It is.
Are you a pansexual? Are you this? Are you that? I think there were 54 last time I counted.
it's ridiculous.
Well, people must make up their own labels for themselves. I have no problem for people to say I'm a pansexual, I'm a this or I'm a that. As long as they don't interfere in other people's rights, and as long as they don't apply what they believe they are in a way that oppresses other people or abuses a power relationship or engages in illegal activities with minors and stuff like that, I've got no problem. I believe it's a social contagion, which got huge outcry on all kind of platforms that you can imagine, because I believe that all young people go through an age of really wanting to conform and belong. And ironically, in the current era, by being different, you are conforming to the ethos of the time. But then by being different, you're being the same as everybody else. So this is the kind of thing that young people do in all the ages and always. And sometimes they have very detrimental effects, like you're seeing in the detransitioning movement now, where more and more young women who had their breasts removed while they were teenagers and then decided that they had other psychological problems at the time, but they were not transgender.
Sure.
And then you've had permanent destruction to your physical integrity that you can't reverse. I'm very opposed to that. I really do not think that a child of 15 is able to say for sure at that age, when you are grappling with a whole lot of identity crises. Identity crisis is part of growing up. It's absolutely part of growing up. And you may well find that you are trans. Very small number of people are genuinely transgender, I'm sure. But we all go through identity crises when we are in our teens. All of us do. But to do yourself irreparable harm by going through a phase is something that I'm very, very concerned about, and I don't believe is right.
You're a mother as well, and
Yes.
I read that you had severe postnatal depression.
Yes.
Tell us more about that experience and how you got through it.
I also think that that's genetic, you know. I didn't know. I didn't know at the time, but my grandmother had such severe postnatal depression that they had to take her children away from her.
Wow.
Now, fortunately, I wasn't that bad. I mean, she was catatonic. She couldn't do anything. So the babies just lay there and screamed, you know. And that's a very, very, very severe form of postnatal depression. I didn't have that form of postnatal depression. But hormonally, I was really depressed for about 18 months. And the minute my hormones came right again, I was fine. So, you know, hormones are difficult things. You know, when you're pregnant and your body's filled with positive hormones, it was one of the most comfortable and lovely times of my life because my body was pumping with the most positive hormones. And then the minute I had the baby, they all vanished from my system and I just crashed down a cliff. And, you know, chemistry's an incredibly complex thing, and especially human chemistry. And I don't know if you did chemistry at school, you probably did, but I did. And if you sit there with a test tube and you've got two test tubes, you've got control group and your experimental group, you put a drop of one chemical into one test tube and a drop of another chemical into another test tube, it changes the reaction entirely. Well, that is exactly how sensitive our systems are. And when our glands are flooding ourselves with certain hormones and then reducing those hormones has a massive psychological impact, I have no doubt.
And how did you get through that? What was...
You just keep on trucking, you know.
Yeah.
You get up every day, you crawl your way through it. I had counseling, obviously. I started a postnatal depression support group. I found that the medication they gave me didn't help at all. I just had to wait for my hormones to settle. And I was fortunate to have a very supportive husband. So that was very useful. I wouldn't have got through it unless I did.
So I see now with the Patriotic Alliance rising, they're obviously taking a few voters away from the DA. How big of a threat is Gayton McKenzie to your party?
I'm sure he'll be a threat in the short term, but I don't think he'll be a threat in the long term. And the reason is this. For whatever sins we have as South Africans, we don't like dictators. And for example, he'll never call a Congress in his party and open himself up to a challenge, an electoral challenge inside his own party. His party is him and him alone, and what he says goes. And if you disagree with him, you're free to leave. Now, things don't work that way because politics is a complex place and applying policies is a complex thing, and people are allowed to have a different opinion. And when the right to a different opinion is institutionalized in a party like the DA, then you can have big debates about issues. The leader doesn't always have to be right. Every 3 years, the leader has to be re-elected. We believe in contests in the DA, and leaders are removed through elections regularly. So the crucial point is that in South Africa, if you're in an organizational institution that doesn't allow you to have a different opinion, that is not the basis for growth and development, number one. Number two, you have to be able to build strong institutions around the whole country. And they have to be sustainable and they have to work systemically, and they can only do that if you have a constitution and rules that allow democracy to go right through your organization and permeate and build a sustainable organization. And the third thing you need is you've got to be able to attract new talent. Now, new talent is never attracted to a dictatorship situation. You might think you'll be in with a dictator for a couple of weeks or months. So I don't believe that the Patriotic Alliance has the medium-term and long-term capacity to attract talent. And then they don't have a foundational political philosophy, except for being for one section of the population, just one. And in South Africa, it's just a fact that we can't make this country succeed unless we understand that we are all part of it, and that we all have a right to be here, and that we all have to pull together to create a country where everyone has opportunities and where everybody can succeed. That is the point. And so he doesn't have that political philosophy. So he's leading people down a dead end. And they will wake up and realize that. It's going to take some while because in this era of identity politics, it seems great when a leader says, I'm not for whites, I'm not interested in whites. I'm not for blacks, I'm not interested in blacks. I'm only for you. And that has some kind of appeal in politics, especially when the whole world is seized by the illness of identity politics. But it has a shelf life, and it won't carry on forever.
Do you think Cyril's doing a good job as president of South Africa?
Well, I'd hate to be trying to hold the ANC together, that's for sure. And, the ANC's got none of the things that I've spoken about. It only holds together through patronage politics. And now that the ANC is losing power, patronage doesn't work anymore. So what have they got to hold it together? They don't have a streamlined organization. They don't have rules that apply to everybody. They don't have a founding political philosophy. They can't attract talent. They've got none of the stuff that is needed to make a viable political party. None. So they're going down the drain. The question is, when will they really start unraveling? You know the old saying, how do you go bankrupt? First slowly and then very quickly. Well, how does a political party collapse? First slowly and then very quickly. And the ANC is very close to that tipping point.
So you say the collapse is inevitable?
Inevitable. And Ramaphosa, poor old Cyril, is presiding over a collapsing institution.
And you, obviously, in your personal capacity with Cyril, you guys get on?
I get on with many people in the ANC. I've got a very long history with many of them. And, politics is a professional space as well. You have tough debates, you disagree with people, you get on with people, some you don't get on with. I get on with some people in the ANC, I don't get on with some people in the DA. It's what it is.
Yeah.
But the critical thing is, do we share a political philosophy? Do we apply and abide by the same rules? If you do that, then you can be in a political party with people you really don't like. I mean, as Tony Leon always used to say, this is a political party, it's not a dinner party. You can have a dinner party with your friends, but when you're in a political party, you apply the rules and everyone obeys the same rules.
Wow. So you've been the mayor of Cape Town, and congratulations, I know 2009, 2008 you won World Mayor of the Year, if I'm correct. You've been through it all. What is the first thing you're doing when you're elected for Mayor of Joburg?
Well, first I've got to get elected to Mayor of Joburg. I mean, first of all, I've got to win my party's nomination, and I haven't done that yet. So I've still got to go through a couple of
When will we know the results?
That depends on the campaign manager. That's Ashel Sarupan. He is our campaign manager, and he will decide when he's going to announce that. But he's not even in a position to announce that now, because I don't think that the candidate selection panel's proposal has even been to the FedEx yet.
Oh.
And so there's still another internal step to go. And then I'm up against 5 other very good people. So if I do win the nomination, then we've got the small thing of an election to get through. And then the DA has to be the biggest party in Joburg. And that depends on the voters, obviously. And if voters do what they've been inclined to do over the last several years and spread and break up their vote over all kinds of tiny parties, then perhaps the ANC will be the biggest party again in Johannesburg. So the voters have to decide, do they want to fragment their vote amongst a whole lot of tiny parties, or do they want to consolidate behind the DA so that we can be bigger than the ANC? That is critical. And unless we are bigger than the ANC in Johannesburg, we don't have the right to take the mayoral position. So there are a lot of things to get through before we get to being the mayor, and then we've got to negotiate a coalition, most likely, in that context. Very difficult. So we've got a lot of things to do.
Yeah. But what would be the first thing you would do? Hypothetically,
the first thing I would do would be to get on top of the finances. I would ask the Auditor General to send a team to take me through the audit report, and especially the management report. And then I would go line by line through the budget. And I would read the Minister of Finance's critique on the finances of the city of Joburg.
People have said so many mean things about you, and
Comes with the territory. Comes with the territory. You can't have a thin skin in politics, not at all.
And they've called you a racist and whatever. But I see you were involved with the Steve Biko back then, years ago when the...
People call me all sorts of things. It's because I'm a fundamental non-racialist. I'm not interested in people's color. I'm genuinely only interested in their caliber as human beings, the quality of their character, their ethics, all of those. That's what worries me. I couldn't care what your color is. Color, race is a social construct. They can't find the genetic difference between me and a woman of color. They'll find a very easy and quick genetic difference between you and me, because you've got an X and Y chromosome and I've got 2 X chromosomes. So they'll immediately find that difference. But they won't find a difference between me and a black woman. So race is a social construct. Sex isn't. Gender isn't. But of course, when I say that, people go hysterical. So that we can leave that out there too. The truth is that I'm a non-racialist, and the DA is the only party now that is genuinely non-racial, the only one. And I stand by that. If you were a disingenuous, dishonest person, I wouldn't care about your color or your sex. Wouldn't be of the slightest interest to me. And equally, if people are treated unfairly, I don't care what their color is. I'll stand up for them.
Very good. Obviously, people say these things, but they don't really know you. And I think that's the
They
main
don't know what being a racist is. That's the truth.
Wow, very good. Lots of keyboard warriors out there.
And chatbots and these linked botnets and all of that sort of thing. No, I ignore them.
What's been your biggest loss politically?
My biggest loss, when you mean when I lost an election or something like that?
Yeah, a bad moment in politics, if I can put it.
A bad moment in politics was when my party tried to suspend me for saying an obvious truth. That was a bad moment.
Yeah,
I can assure you.
Mm.
And when very, very few of them stood up for me, that was a bad moment.
Sure. How did you work through that?
You just do.
Sure.
And you see, I'm not the kind of person who says, well, I'm now going to another party. I would never do that, because no other party, and certainly I've read most parties' constitutions, embeds in their constitution and in their political philosophy the values that I hold dear. Only the DA does. So for me, it's the DA or bust.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, we've got to fix this party. We've got to fix this party. And there were many other people in the party who felt the same way as I did. And so I came back in 2019 to try and do that with other people, obviously not alone.
You know, I spoke to one of your biggest critics a while back, and we're still going to do a podcast soon. So you'll see who he is. And he told me that he doesn't agree with you politically, but he has a lot of respect for you. And because you built the DA up from essentially not much to something big. And I thought that was a genuine compliment.
With a lot of other people, with
Yeah,
a lot of
course.
other people. I mean, we've got a good constitution. We implement our principles and our policies. We hold each other to account. It's the institution that is strong.
Sure. So I always end off with a few wildcard questions.
Good, cool.
If there's one leader in the ANC who you respect and you would try and win over to the DA, who would it be?
Oh, now that's a damn tough question. It would have been Tito Mboweni, or think of some others. I always had respect for Kgalema Motlanthe. But I can't think of any of them now. Truly, I can't.
So what does Helen Zille do on a weekend? What does your weekend look like?
If I have a really good weekend, I get to see my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I get to watch them play sport on a Saturday, especially my granddaughter now, she's old enough to play sport on a Saturday. I get to go on a lekker walk with them along the Lisbeth River. If I'm really lucky, I get to babysit them. And when their parents are out and I'm babysitting, it's my rules. And my rules mean you can order out.
Sure.
So they can order a pizza and plan their whole pizza. I know what they like. Or they can order pasta or all the things that they like. And then I let them watch TV for a while. And then they can listen to a children's podcast. That's my rules.
Sure.
And I love that.
Must be lekker being Oma Zille. Or being in Oma Zille's house.
No, it's totally lekker to be an Oma of those two lovely grandchildren.
Sport little ones. What would be your last meal on earth?
On earth,
Yeah.
a really good curry
Nice.
with sambals and all of that. I love spicy food. It would either be a Thai curry or an Indian curry.
Sure.
One of those two.
Interesting. And if you could get one guest on this podcast or nominate one person, who would it be?
Who would be really interesting? Let me see who would have a really interesting perspective on the world and challenge people and challenge people's thinking. I would look for someone who, at the very depth of South Africa's economic depression, started a business and made it a massive success. When everyone was withdrawing their money from South Africa and investing elsewhere and trying to emigrate, the people who swam in the opposite direction and made a success.
Yeah.
I always think that's very, very exciting. An obvious person is somebody like the people who started Capitec Bank, for example. There's a very interesting book written about that. And you must take a look at it, because those are people whose minds don't go with the herd. They haven't got a herd mentality.
Yeah.
They think differently. And, you know, Steve Jobs always used to say, think different. So I think your podcast will do well to seek out in South Africa everyone who could think different and make a success of what they did.
Thank you for that. And what would your last advice be to young people out there?
Life is tough. You'll have a lot of setbacks inevitably, because life is like that for everybody. And the critical skill you need to succeed is perseverance. It's not brilliance. It's not good looks. It's not a string of degrees. It is the capacity to work through bad times and keep going. That is the critical thing. Perseverance and integrity are the two most important attributes that a human being can have to be successful in life.
Zille, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.